Everyone, I'm Katie and welcome to my kitchen. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how I make my homemade meatballs. This is my own original recipe and I'm so excited to share it with all of you today. So let's get started. So in my meatball bowl, I've got a pound of ground meat. You can use any kind of ground meat you want. This is ground beef. I use the 93% and 93% lean ground beef. You want a little bit of fat, but not a whole lot of fat. I've made meatballs with ground bison, ground venison, ground moose. You could also use turkey if you wanted to, or you could even use those Impossible crumbles that are plant-based if you're vegetarian. So I'd encourage you to experiment. Some people like to use a mixture of pork and veal as well for that authentic Italian flavor. But you know what gives it the authentic flavor? The spices. All right, so let's get started. So we got our meat. To our meat, we're going to flavor it with garlic. How much garlic? Enough. Enough garlic. And when I say enough garlic, you'll know how much is enough. And I say that because not everybody likes garlic. Some people like more garlic and some people like less garlic. In our household, we like garlic. So in here, I've used my garlic press and I've squeezed out between 6 and 8 cloves. So that's enough garlic. That's what enough garlic looks like. Okay, next up I'm going to season it with thyme. This thyme was fresh and then it kind of dried out in my fridge because I didn't use it enough. So I got the leaves here and just sprinkle some in. Maybe use about 3/4 of a teaspoon to maybe a full teaspoon. So we go. We got the thyme. Got the thyme. We got the thyme. I'm going to use fresh parsley. I've cut this up using my manual food processor. So how much parsley? Well, if you're using fresh herbs, which I highly encourage and highly recommend, I would say maybe 2 tablespoons. What does that look like? Does that look like 2 tablespoons? Maybe 3. I don't know. Play around with it until you get the consistency you like. The next herb I'm going to put into my meatballs is basil. This is fresh basil that I grew at my house here. And I am going to be kind of generous with it, and not quite as generous as the parsley. You want maybe 1 to 2 tablespoons. Depends if you like basil or not. So that's the basil in the bowl. Next up, I'm going to use crushed red pepper. How much crushed red pepper? This is about a teaspoon. My husband and I go back and forth about how much crushed red pepper is enough crushed red pepper. And for me, enough is a little bit more than his enough, so I have to take it down. Next up, I'm going to use flaked sea salt to season my meatballs. Let's see. How much salt do you put in the meatballs? Enough. Maybe a teaspoon. You can see in the palm of my hand here, I like to make a cup with my hand and kind of fill that up with the salt. And that's how much salt is enough salt. Next up, we're going to season it with fresh ground pepper. This is my Pampered Chef peppercorn crusher. I like to use the peppercorn medley because I like all the different types of peppercorns. This one has white peppercorns, green peppercorns, black peppercorns, and red peppercorns. So how much crushed pepper do you want? Well, I use kind of a coarser pepper ground. You want to use maybe a teaspoon, but again, this is to taste. So how much is enough? When it's enough, you'll know. So here we go. We've got our seasonings in here. I'm going to take my little tool here and I'm going to just squish it up. Actually, I have a better tool to use than this. This is my better tool. This is the Pampered Chef Mix and Chop. This is a far superior tool. I love my little wooden thing, but this is probably better for what I'm doing today. So I'm using the Mix and Chop, and we're going to just kind of break up the meat so the meat is in roughly equal crumbly bits. because we've got 2 more ingredients that are coming. What I can use this for is to scrape out the little wedges of the mix and chop here. I love this tool. You can use it for so many things. You make scrambled eggs with it, break up your meat with it. It's great on taco night. So you can see I've got the fresh herbs incorporated into the ground meat. Then we're going to add some more stuff. What are we going to add to this? Well, you know, some meatball recipes call for breadcrumbs. Some of them call for milk, and I do have milk. I'm going to put a splash of milk in here. How much is a splash? A splash is 1 to 2 tablespoons. You'll know when it's enough. You want it to be kind of dampened by the milk, but you don't want it to be soppy wet. If you're one of those people that uses breadcrumbs in your meatballs, you might want a little bit more milk. Why do I put the milk in if I don't use breadcrumbs, you say? Well, because I want to add a little flavor. I want the meat, I don't want it to be a solid hunk of meat. I want it to have like little bits of things in it. So that's why I put the milk in. It's one of those things that you get in the habit of doing. But the milk is more important and definitely a must if you're using breadcrumbs. I'm going to share a link to my recipe in the comments below. And you can figure out what works for you. This is how I do it. So the next thing we're going to put in our meatballs, this is mozzarella cheese. It's shredded. If I had Parmesan cheese, I would use Parmesan cheese, but today I do not have Parmesan cheese. But I do have a little bit of a knob of mozzarella from the pizza I made on Friday night. So we're going to put a little bit of cheese in here. How much cheese? Well, maybe 1/3 cup. I say maybe because this looks like more than 1/4 cup, and it's definitely less than 1/2 cup. So if you like cheese, put more cheese in. If you don't like cheese, don't put any cheese in. This is totally up to you because meatballs are very individual. Very individual. Like I said, this is my own recipe, so it might be different than what your grandmother made or what your mother made. Or if you're Swedish, definitely these are not Swedish meatballs. Although I have made Swedish meatballs, the seasonings are different. A lot different. And there's no garlic. Prefer the IKEA ones actually, but can't always get to IKEA. And besides, IKEA meatballs don't go with spaghetti, and tonight I am making my own pasta. So, yeah. We need Italian-style meatballs. And Italian is the language that we are speaking today. Molto bene. Alright, so we got our cheese mixed up in there. So we've got a solid hunk of meat here. And let's see, what else goes in here? I think we're going to go get an egg. Just bear with me here. Most of the time I've got the movie magic going and I have all my ingredients prepped, but I didn't pull out an egg. So we got an egg. Bloop. I'll put the egg in there. I'm going to use my wooden tool to get the egg kind of broken up in here, just because I don't want to clean egg runny bits out of the mix and chop. So what is the purpose of the egg? Well, the purpose of the egg in your meatball meat is to hold it together. So it's in there as a binder. It holds your meat together so that you get your nice ball of meat. Alright, so we've got our meatball meat, and now we are ready to put the meatball meat in the pan. So I have a special thing I want to share with you. I'm really excited about this thing. That's why it's so special. The special thing I'm going to share with you is my meatball pan. And you're probably thinking, what's a meatball pan? Well, I'll show you. So this is my meatball pan. It's actually not really a meatball pan. It's really a donut hole pan, but I don't make donut holes very much, but I do make meatballs. So you can see it's got 24 little wells so that you can make 24 meatballs, 2 dozen meatballs. So let's see what we can do. Let's see if we can fill it up. And I'm looking for, I had a little tool to scoop the meatballs out. Yep, here it is. So this is a cookie cutter tool. It's my dog Ace. I'm going to scoop it up, put it in each little well. We got meatballs. So if you didn't have one of these cookie tools, the cookie dispensing tools, you could use a small or a medium-sized scoop if you've got one of those little scoopy doopies. When you use a tool to measure the meat for your meatball, what it does is it helps you to be consistent in the size and the portion. So I'm at a stage in my life where I need to weigh and measure my food and be concerned with portioning. And having things consistent is a really good thing in my world. You can see. So the Pampered Chef meatball pan, aka donut hole pan, because if you want to buy one of these things, you're going to have to search for it on their website as the donut hole pan. It has a non-stick surface. It's pretty color blue. That's my dog Ace. He's still barking. My husband's doing some work out front, and I think that's why he's barking. So what kind of meatballs do you like best? Is there an ingredient you would never put in meatballs? Are you a person that doesn't like garlic? And that's okay if you don't like garlic. You don't have to put garlic in. I do because I like it. I also happen to live in Florida, and right now there's a lot of mosquitoes. So if I can eat something that helps keep the mosquitoes away, I'm going to do it. And garlic happens to be one of those things that keeps mosquitoes away. And flies too, for that matter, other bugs. A lot of bugs in Florida. So I grew up making meatballs by watching my mother. I don't think my mother actually had a recipe, but I would always watch what she did and how she seasoned them. And then over the years I came up with my own take on meatballs, which is what you're seeing today. And the meatballs I make, they're slightly different every time, and the reason for that is because sometimes I don't always have basil. Sometimes I don't always have thyme. Sometimes I don't have parsley. I happen to have fresh parsley today because I'm making homemade pasta sauce in a little bit, and you could check that out in another video. So I wanted parsley for the sauce because I'm a firm believer in fresh ingredients. So when you can use fresh herbs and spices in your cooking, your food is going to taste a whole lot better. At a minimum, though, you'll notice that it tastes a little different than what you think it would have tasted like. Go. Maybe that's a little bit too much. You can have one. Happy little meatballs! So these are my meatballs. Right now I have my oven, it's preheated to 350. So after this, we're going to put them in the oven for about 20 to 25 minutes. My mother always used to say that you would know when the meatballs were done because they would smell like they're done. So how long do you cook meatballs? Till they're done. And how do you know when they're done? Well, they have a little bit of a golden brown color on them. I think we're going to be one short on this pan. A little bit brown, a little bit juicy. Now I used to put a piece of tin foil on top of a cookie sheet and then put the meatballs on the cookie sheet, but now I have this meatball pan. I don't need to do that anymore. So each meatball is going to cook in its own juices. There we go. See, we used it all. So that's meatballs in the meatball pan. Come back in a few minutes and we'll show you what they look like.